All my videos are pretty spontaneous. This one may be a little bit more spontaneous than usual. I got a question that for me relates to the past, present, and future of this channel. I've been asked lately to comment on new political developments in Cambodia. There have been some very dramatic, very historically significant political developments in Cambodia lately. I have been watching that. I've been kind of walking around my apartment talking to my girlfriend about that. I mean, I've also been watching very dramatic political events unfolding in Iraq, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Yemen. There's been a lot going on that I personally do care about and try to follow and try to, respond to within my personal relationships in life. So, I mean, the question could be glossed as, why am I not talking about this stuff on my YouTube channel? So when I first started my YouTube channel, it was not meant to be a vegan channel. When I first moved to Victoria, BC, Canada, I really did imagine that my channel would have wide-ranging discussions of political history and current and ongoing political problems, especially in Asian politics. And probably it was inevitable that I was going to talk about First Nations politics if I was living and working in Canada continuously, which was my assumption. When I moved to Victoria, I was not planning to move straight back to Asia after that. So that probably would have been about halfway between the format I currently have on YouTube and the format you see on shows like The Young Turks, or there's a spin-off project from The Young Turks called The Jimmy Dore Show. Probably it would have been closer to The Jimmy Dore Show. But I was really planning to have other students from political science, from politics of Asia, come in and sit at a round table with me and talk about what was going on, especially in politics of Asia. So that was, it's my area of past expertise, and what I thought I would be working on was, at that time, it was researching and writing essays about politics of Asia and so on. Now, one of the reasons why that didn't happen was, and it's a very, very depressing element of universities in Canada, I did not meet one person, not one student at any level, who had any interest in politics of Asia, even though I was in an academic department dedicated to the politics of Asia. In Canada, I can remember you can be in a 400-level course on philosophy of Plato, and there isn't one person in the course who's interested in philosophy of Plato. You can have a whole department dedicated to a topic, and you don't meet a single person in that department who's actually interested in the topic. This is quite common in Canada. You can be in Department of Cree and Ojibwe languages at First Nations University, and you can't find even one student who's interested in learning Cree and Ojibwe as languages. This is a recurring feature of my life. But yeah, it was kind of, I can't say it's a shocking disappointment because it was kind of long, slow, but it was this bizarre element of my life in Victoria, BC, that there was absolutely nobody for me to talk to about politics, or specifically politics of Asia, despite the fact that really was my major and what I was doing. Aside from my professors, I did have a lot of conversations with my professors, and because I'm an older student, obviously some of the professors spoke to me as equals. Not all of them, but some of them were quite happy to sit down and have those kinds of casual conversations with me and to treat me more like an equal rather than talk to me like I'm a 19-year-old student, because I'm a student, but I'm not remotely 19 years old anymore. Anyway, there was definitely a time when that was what I thought my channel would be and become. And there have been different times when I've looked at kind of going back to that format, going back to that plan. And now, as I look ahead on the calendar, and I'm looking at going back to Canada, I'm going back via France, going to see my daughter again, then going back to France. Going back to France, then going back from France to Canada. There's the possibility that, again, this will become a bit more of a kind of news and politics show. Now, at this moment and during this last year or year and a half in China, I felt that wasn't an option for me for a variety of reasons. One is just not having access to publications, not having access to an academic library, not having access to any of the major kind of magazines on paper, and obviously limited access to the internet itself. And two, we did at the time I arrived in Kunming, right around then, there was actually a crackdown on live streaming services in China. Because in China, we have some freedom of speech, some. I received a propaganda message on my cell phone from the Chinese government, reminding me of that not too long ago. It said something in Chinese like, enjoy the broadcasting privileges you have without overstepping the limits of those privileges. In China, we do have more freedom of speech than many other countries, but there are limits. And among the limits that was really explained to the public and imposed anew, there was a crackdown, so we all got the message around the time I first got to China, was the idea that if you want to discuss the news on the internet, you must have a news broadcaster's license. So in the same way that you can't drive a car without a driver's license in a country like Canada, you are not allowed to discuss the news on the internet, not even in a live streaming format, like not even in a spontaneous manner, unless you have a news broadcaster's license. So there was a crackdown on live streaming services, and obviously, I mean, using YouTube itself is completely blocked and banned and illegal in China to begin with. So that was one consideration. I would say that right now in Thailand, you have less freedom of speech than China. So it's not the case that I could be back and forth from Thailand or something and uploading there or running a second kind of news channel. And the third thing is to remember, I mean, I often do say in a certain sense that I don't care about the number of views I get. I don't care about the level of success I get. That is true for most of these videos that are either about my life or about the future of the vegan movement, or about things I'm really passionate about, where it's like, look, you know, like I really care about the future of the vegan movement. I really care, you know, about sharing with you guys certain things about my personal life, you know, my relationship with my daughter, even my experience with university, things like that I just do care about. Like I really had to unburden myself talking about how awful my experience at university is. We had a couple videos on that lately. So there are some topics on which it's true I'm going to make the same video whether 100 people see it or 5,000 people see it. That would also be true of the Korean Ojibwe stuff. I've done a series of videos lately that have a very small number of viewers each, but that's okay. I accept that. I know not that many people are interested in my perspective on First Nations politics, Cree, Ojibwe, et cetera, language politics, and so on in Canada. But I care about that enough that I'm going to make that video even if a very small number of people see it. However, on the other hand, when you're looking at putting together the effort to do a kind of news desk format, I mean, I got this question asking me, will I switch to a little bit more of a news desk format and talk about what's been going on lately in North Korea, what's been going on lately in Mosul and Iraq perhaps, but you know, what's been going on, obviously Cambodia is a great example of something where my background in Asian studies and politics, I know things about this, I want to know more, I'd enjoy doing the research and prep to put together a really high quality informative video on that. Like I'd benefit from it, but I'm also kind of burdened by how much I know from past research and I want to kind of share my perspective and stoke up discussion. You know what, I'd love to do that, but if I make videos of that kind, if I put in that effort, is it just going to be, you know, for 100 people? Now, the other reality is the main collaborator I have in these videos is my girlfriend, Melissa. And I do talk to her about that. It's like, well, does she want to go through the process of researching and recording those videos with me? You know, where she's sitting down and talking with me at the camera, you know, chit-chatting about these things. And again, it may really be, you know, the latest developments in Saudi Arabian foreign policy and geopolitics, very strange triangular alliance in the United States, Saudi Arabia, and Israel. A lot of action on that topic just these last few weeks. A lot to say about that. Or it may be, you know, the United States and their war against ISIS, North Korea, Cambodia, all these issues that for me are worth talking about, or even current politics of Thailand. So if I'm back in Canada, I'm going to take that on. As much work as that might be for me, obviously it would also be asking a lot of my girlfriend. It would be putting her in a position. And, you know, in terms of the collaborators I was hoping for, I was assuming I would do those kinds of videos with maybe someone who was getting a master's degree or a PhD, someone who's a graduate student in Asian politics, someone who's already dug into that lane. So it's an open question. My girlfriend and I now assume that when we go back to Canada, we're going to enroll in college courses together in cuisine, in learning how to bake vegan bread. So this channel might start to take on some very, very different types of content. On the one hand, when I'm back in Canada, I'll have more freedom of speech. I'll actually be able to talk about politics. I'll be able to live stream about and record videos about the news, what's been going on now, whether that's politics of Asia, politics within Canada. First, I could say a lot about politics in Canada, of course. I could start following that stuff and respond to that stuff. On the other hand, it seems inevitable that we're going to start making videos about baking bread, about baking cakes, about vegan cuisine and cooking, because that's part of what we're going to do with our time. It's possible to be making videos that will reflect short-term jobs and job applications and credentialization and some of that stuff going on in my life. But yeah, for me, it is still an open question. I mean, right now, I really haven't had the luxury to take on things like new political developments in Cambodia. Once I have that luxury again in Canada, would I, should I, or could I? It's really easy to look at what's going on YouTube right now and say, look, there's a big gap for talking about politics of Asia. In the past, I did a survey to see what there was. The Young Turks don't cover politics of Asia, and there are very, very few channels doing anything like that. There's certainly a gap, I think, for talking about politics of Canada, and indeed even First Nations politics specifically. But I've built up my small audience of people who will line up to hear me give morality lectures really on the basis of vegan politics and vegan politics alone. And you'd be looking at a really tough struggle to even reach 1,000 viewers, starting from where I'm starting at, if I take on that direction. So I'm going to have to look at what libraries I have access to and what positive difference I can make by taking on that kind of content and taking on that kind of format. But this is something I think about. I'm in a situation right now where it's funny. I mean, like I say, I share my life with people on YouTube, but not even out of censorship. The reality is I talk about and care about all these things in politics and political science. And I mean, really, like I'm here in my apartment reading about them every day, watching the news about them every day, and talking to my girlfriend about them every day. And it's really strange because that right now is completely absent from the side of my life you see here on YouTube. Here on YouTube, you really only see me thinking and talking about politics and philosophy within the vegan movement, not in the broader world, not the question of kind of the political future of Canada, not the political future of the continent of Asia. And obviously I have more engagement with some parts of Asia than others, it being a huge and diverse continent. Can that change? And for you guys as the audience, would that even be a change for the better? Or would I end up just alienating the audience I've got and having to start from scratch? Big questions.